Have you ever noticed how your mind can become your own worst enemy? One negative thought, just one, can snowball into an entire day, a week, or even a season of despair. Negative thinking is like a shadow that follows you, making every situation seem darker than it really is. But here's the truth, you have more power over your mind than you realize. Every thought you allow to take root has the potential to shape your reality. The moment you recognize that you are not your thoughts, that you have the ability to observe them, challenge them, and redirect them, you begin to reclaim your peace, your energy, and your purpose. Stop letting negativity dictate your tree. Stop letting self-doubt and fear hijack your potential. The path to a peaceful mind doesn't come from ignoring challenges, but from choosing to respond to them with clarity, faith, and courage. It starts with awareness, then intentional echoes, and then, gradually but surely, your mindset shifts, your heart heals, and you begin to experience the freedom that comes from refusing to let negative thinking control your life. Awareness is the first step toward transforming your inner world, because you cannot change what you cannot see. Most of us move through life on autopilot, reacting to thoughts that appear in the mind as if they are absolute. A negative thought arises. Nothing will enough. I can't do this. Nothing will work out for now. And without even realizing it, we accept it, absorb it, and start living as if it is our reality. But the moment you pause and become aware, truly aware, of what your mind is saying, everything begins to shift. Awareness is like turning on a light in a dark room. The furniture didn't move, the space didn't change, but suddenly you can see what's there. In the same way, your problems may still exist, your challenges may still be real, but now you can see your thoughts clearly instead of stumbling around in the dark. Awareness allows you to step back from the constant noise of your mind and observe what is happening instead of drowning in it. You begin to notice patterns, how a single negative thought leads to another, how fear can disguise itself, how self-criticism appears so naturally that you don't even question it. Awareness teaches you to pause before reacting. It gives you the space between the thought and your response, and in that space lies your freedom. When you are conscious of your thoughts, you no longer allow them to control you. Instead, you begin to guide them. And this is where transformation begins, not by fighting your thoughts, not by forcing them away, but by simply seeing them for what they are: temporary, passing, and sometimes completely untrue. Awareness also brings compassion. When you start to observe your thoughts, rather than judge yourself for having them, you realize that the mind is simply doing what it has been conditioned to do. If you have spent years surrounded by negativity, fear, or criticism, your mind will naturally echo those experiences. But awareness gives you the chance to question the script. Instead of saying, "Why am I like this?" you begin to ask, "Where did this come from? And do I want to keep carrying it?" This question alone can soften your heart and reduce the power negative thinking has over you. It opens the door to healing because you begin to understand that your thoughts are not a reflection of who you are. They are reflections of what you've been through. And once you see that, you gain the power to choose differently. Awareness allows you to catch a negative thought the moment it appears, before it spirals and gathers momentum. You start recognizing the tone of self-doubt, the distortion of fear, the heaviness of past experiences trying to creep into your present moment. Instead of automatically accepting these thoughts as truth, you can pause, breathe, and challenge them. You can ask yourself as leaders, is this thought helping me or harming me? Is it grounded in reality, or is it a shadow from my past? Does it come from wisdom, or does it come from fear? With awareness, you shift from reacting to responding. You shift from being controlled by your mind to gently guiding it toward clarity and balance. Awareness is not about becoming perfect or never having negative thoughts again. It's about becoming conscious enough to refuse to let your thoughts run your life. It's about catching the moment your mind tries to pull you into old wounds or imagined fears and gently bringing yourself back to the present. This practice, when repeated consistently, rewires your inner world. It creates new pathways of calm, trust. You begin to notice that the thoughts that once shook you no longer have the same power. The fears that once consumed you no longer define you. The patterns that once trapped you begin to fade. Slowly but profoundly, awareness becomes the foundation on which a new mindset is built. It becomes your anchor in emotional storms and your compass when life feels confusing. With awareness, you stop living as a prisoner of your thoughts and start living as the author of your inner story. And that is where real change begins. Challenge the lies, because your mind, when left unchecked, can become a storyteller that exaggerates fears, distorts reality, and convinces you of things that were never true. Every negative thought carries a message, but not every message is accurate, fair, or rooted in reality. Sometimes the mind whispers lies so softly that you don't even realize you're believing them. Lies like "you can't bluff, nothing will change." Lies like nothing will change. Lies like everyone else is stronger than you. These thoughts creep in during moments of vulnerability, disguise themselves as truth, and begin to shape the way you see yourself and your life. But the moment you begin to challenge them, to pause and question them, they start to lose their power. Challenging the lies is an act of courage. It's the moment you stop surrendering to every fearful narrative your mind offers. It's the moment you begin to rebel against the internal voice that speaks from pain, insecurity, or the wounds of your past. You don't fight the mind with aggression, you fight it with truth. You fight it by asking the czar, is this real? Is this thought based on evidence, or is it just an old wound resurfacing? Does this belief empower me, or does it imprison me? Would I say this to someone I love? When you begin to question your thoughts with honesty and intention, the illusions start to crumble. What once felt heavy becomes lighter. What once felt absolute begins to soften. Lies often take root because they feel familiar. Maybe you were told you weren't good enough, so now your mind repeats it automatically. Maybe you experience failure, so your mind assumes failure is your destiny. Maybe you've been hurt, so your mind creates lies to protect you from further pain. Lies like, don't try again, it won't work. But when you challenge these thoughts, you realize that familiarity doesn't equal truth. The mind memorizes pain, but that doesn't mean it has to define your future. When a negative thought arises, instead of accepting it, ask yourself, who told me this? Where did this belief come from? Did I decide this for myself, or did the world teach it to me? These questions begin to unravel stories that no longer serve you. Challenging the lies also requires self-compassion. It means allowing yourself to acknowledge that not everything your mind says is true, and that's okay. You don't have to blame yourself for it. The mind is shaped by experiences, environments, fears, and voices you didn't choose. But you as King choose to rewire it. You can choose to separate your identity from the negative narratives that have clung to you for years. When a harsh thought arises, you failed. Respond with truth. I learned. When your mind says you're weak, respond with truth. If I survived things that would have broken many. When your mind whispers, you're not enough. True. Respond with enough. I am already worthy. This is not delusion. This is reclaiming your narrative from the grip of falsehood. And the moment you begin to do this consistently, you start noticing something profound. The lies that once held so much weight begin to shrink. Thoughts that once triggered anxiety no longer hit as deeply. Fears that once felt paralyzing become manageable. You begin to see the difference between a thought that comes from truth and a thought that comes from insecurity. You become more emotionally stable, more grounded, more confident, not because life becomes easier, but because your mind becomes clearer. Challenging the lies is not a one-time act, it's a lifelong practice. Negative thoughts will still arise, but they no longer get to dictate your life. Instead of being swept away by every story your mind creates, you learn to pause, observe, and question. You learn to respond with clarity instead of reacting from fear. You learn to speak to yourself with the same compassion you would offer to someone you deeply care about. And this shift transforms everything. Because when the lies lose their power, you uncover the truth beneath them that you are capable, strong, resilient, and more than enough. You realize that most of the limits you believed in were never real. They were constructs of the mind. You realize your potential is far greater than your fears ever allowed you to see. When you challenge the lies, you reclaim your mind. When you reclaim your mind, you reclaim your life. Replace, don't suppress. Because trying to push negative thoughts out of your mind is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can force it down for a moment, but eventually it pops back up with even more pressure. Suppression doesn't heal, it only hides, and anything you hide continues to grow in the dark. Many people try to deal with negativity by ignoring it, denying it, or pretending it's not there. But unprocessed thoughts and emotions don't disappear. They simply wait for a weaker moment to take over. The real transformation begins not when you silence your thoughts, but when you replace them with something truer, gentler, and more empowering. Replacing a thought is an act of conscious intention. It means that when your mind offers you a negative belief, I'm failing, you don't just try to push it away. Instead, you meet it with a healthier, more grounded thought. I'm learning, and progress takes time. When your mind whispers, I'm alone, you don't suppress the pain. You replace it with the truth. I am supported in ways I may not always see. This isn't about forced positivity or pretending everything is perfect. It's about shifting the direction of your inner conversation so your mind becomes a place of clarity instead of chaos. Replacing negative thoughts also requires understanding that the mind is like a garden. If you don't plant anything in it, weeds will grow by default. So when negativity arises, the goal isn't to yank out every weed with force. That only exhausts you. Instead, plant something stronger. Plant thoughts rooted in gratitude, patience, faith, and possibility. Over time, these healthier thoughts grow bigger and stronger, crowding out the negativity without a battle. You're not fighting your mind, you're retraining it. You're teaching it a new language of hope, resilience, and perspective. When you suppress thoughts, you create tension inside yourself. You may pretend everything is fine, while internally your emotions build pressure like a shaken bottle. Eventually, the smallest trigger sets everything going. But when you replace thoughts, you create flow instead of conflict. You acknowledge what you feel, but you choose to guide your mind somewhere healthier. You honor the emotion, but you don't allow it to dominate your internal landscape. You give yourself permission to feel and permission to grow. Replacing doesn't mean lying to yourself. It doesn't mean saying I'm happy when you're heartbroken. It means finding a thought that is both true and healing. Instead of this, nothing ever works out for me. Try as some things have been difficult, but I'm still here, still trying, still growing. As instead of I'm not strong enough, try I'm stronger than I think, and strength is built one moment at a time. It's instead of I can't handle this, try I don't have to handle everything at once. I can take it step by step. These replacements don't deny your struggle, they give it direction. They turn your pain into perspective rather than poison. Replacing thoughts also means choosing what you feed your mind daily. The content you consume, the people you listen to, the environment you surround yourself with, these all shape the thoughts your mind will naturally produce. If you constantly expose yourself to negativity, comparison, and noise, your mind will echo that. But if you fill your mind with wisdom, inspiration, stillness, and gratitude, your thoughts begin to reflect those qualities. Replacing isn't only internal, it's also about choosing better external inputs. Over time, this practice becomes more. You'll begin to notice negative thoughts sooner. You'll catch them in the moment instead of hours later when they've already affected your mood. You'll respond to them with clarity rather than panic. Slowly, your inner voice becomes kinder, more balanced, and more encouraging. The same mind that once tore you apart begins to support you. The same thoughts that once drained you begin to strengthen you. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. Every time you replace instead of suppress, you rewire the pathways of your mind. You teach yourself that you are not helpless against negativity. You have the power to redirect it. You have the power to choose what thought takes root, what thought grows, and what thought is left behind. Replacing your thoughts is an act of love toward yourself. It's choosing gentleness over self-attack, truth over fear, clarity over confusion. It's reminding your mind again and again that it is not a battlefield but a home, and homes deserve to be tended and filled with thoughts that bring peace rather than pain. Focus on gratitude, not as a cliche, not as a quick fix, but as a spiritual practice that has the power to completely shift the direction of your mind. Gratitude is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to see what is still beautiful, still present, still merciful, even in the middle of your struggle. It doesn't erase the pain, but it gives your heart a place to rest within it. When your mind is flooded with negativity, it's often because it has zoomed in so closely on what's missing or what's uncertain that it becomes blind to everything else. Gratitude pulls the mind back. It widens your vision. It reminds you that even when one part of your life feels heavy, there are still countless places where light is shining quietly, waiting to be noticed. Gratitude is a form of grounding. It brings you back to the present moment, away from the fears of the future and the shadows of the past. When you pause and acknowledge even one blessing, a breath, a heartbeat, a moment of safety, an unexpected kindness, you interrupt the cycle of negativity. You shift the mind from scarcity to abundance, from fear to calm, from despair to possibility. The blessing doesn't need to be big. Sometimes the smallest realizations create the biggest emotional shifts. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, the softness of your pillow, the fact that you made it through days you once thought you wouldn't survive. Gratitude doesn't require perfection, it only requires attention. When you focus on gratitude, you begin to see life differently. The things you used to overlook start to feel meaningful. The people you took for granted begin to feel precious. Even your hardships reveal lessons and strengths you didn't know you had. Gratitude doesn't deny the existence of pain. It teaches you how to coexist with it without letting it consume your entire reality. It helps you remember that every difficulty you face is accompanied by some form of support, some form of ease, some form of divine mercy, even if it's subtle. This shift is powerful enough to calm anxiety, soften anger, and dissolve hopelessness because it brings your heart back into alignment with truth that you are not empty, you are not abandoned, you are not without gifts. A grateful mind becomes a resilient mind. It doesn't collapse under pressure because it knows how to anchor itself in what is steady. A person who practices gratitude can still cry, still feel overwhelmed, still experience doubt, but they don't stay stuck there. Gratitude becomes like a rope that pulls them out every time they slip into negativity. It becomes a habit that rewires the brain to look for the good before the bad, to recognize possibility before 4, to trust that life carries both ease and hardship, but never one without the other. But gratitude requires intention. It won't grow on its own in a mind that's used to focusing on problems. You have to cultivate it deliberately. This could mean taking a moment each morning to recognize one blessing before the day begins. It could mean pausing during stress and asking yourself, what is still supporting me right now? It could mean ending your night by acknowledging one thing that went right, even if everything else felt difficult. These small practices slowly reshape the way your mind thinks, teaching it to search for light instead of falling into darkness by default. Gratitude also transforms relationships. When you start noticing the small acts of kindness, the support you receive, the patience others show, your heart becomes softer and your connections deepen. You stop expecting perfection from people and begin appreciating their sincerity. You stop focusing on what they failed to give and begin valuing what they offer out of love. Gratitude turns ordinary interactions into meaningful ones and helps heal emotional wounds created by constant disappointment. Most importantly, gratitude reconnects you spiritually. It lifts your heart from complaint to reflection, from frustration to humility, from bitterness to trust. It whispers to your soul that you are being provided for in ways you may not always understand. It reminds you that even in your darkest nights, there are still signs of mercy and care surrounding you. Breath by breath, moment by moment. This awareness alone is enough to bring clarity to a confused mind and calm to a restless heart. Focus on gratitude not because life is always easy, but because gratitude teaches you how to see the beauty within the difficulty. It shifts your perspective from, why is this happening to me? What is this teaching me? From, I have nothing left, to, I still have something. And when your heart begins to recognize what is present instead of what is missing, the weight of negativity slowly begins to lift, replaced by a quiet strength that carries you forward with hope, resilience, and peace. Limit toxic input, because what you allow into your mind becomes the very material your thoughts are built from. Your inner world is shaped not only by your experiences, but also by what you constantly feed your heart and mind. If you surround yourself with negativity, negative people, negative media, negative conversations, your thoughts will naturally mirror that environment. The mind absorbs everything it encountered, even the things you think you're ignoring. Just like your body responds to what you eat, your mind responds to what you consume emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. When you continuously expose yourself to toxic input, you shouldn't be surprised when your thoughts become heavy, your heart becomes anxious, and your perspective becomes clouded. Protecting your peace isn't just about controlling what you think internally, it's also about being intentional with what you allow in from the outside. Toxic input can show up in many forms. Sometimes it's the people around you, those who constantly complain, criticize, gossip, or drain your energy. Their words slowly shape your thinking, making you more negative, more reactive, more hopeless without even realizing it. Sometimes toxicity comes from the media you consume. When you spend hours scrolling through content that triggers insecurity, comparison, fear, or outrage, your mind absorbs those emotions and carries them long after you put your phone down. And sometimes the toxic input comes from environments, workplaces, friend groups, or even family dynamics that normalize stress, pessimism, and emotional chaos. Little by little, this exposure becomes the background noise of your life, influencing your thoughts without your consent. Limiting toxic input doesn't mean shutting yourself off from the world. It means choosing wisely what deserves a place in your mental space. You don't need to absorb every problem, every opinion, every emotion that comes your way. You don't have to engage in every conversation or stay connected to every person who has access to you. You are allowed to create boundaries, not walls, but filters. Filters that protect your mind from the unnecessary weight of other people's negativity. Filters that help you recognize when something no longer aligns with your peace. Filters that teach you that your emotional energy is precious and not everyone should have free access to it. When you limit toxic input, you clear space for clarity, calm. Imagine your mind as a room. If it is filled with noise, clutter, and chaos, there's no room for peace to enter. But when you start removing what doesn't belong, negative voices, damaging influences, harmful habits, you create space for healthier thoughts to grow. You create space for gratitude, hope, creativity, and faith. You create space for your true self to breathe. Limiting toxic input is not about being overly sensitive. It's about being deeply aware that your environment shapes your emotional and mental well-being far more than you realize. Limiting toxicity also means being mindful of your digital world. Social media can be a useful tool, but it can also become a trap of comparison and unrealistic expectations. You must ask yourself, is this content uplifting me or draining me? Is this person inspiring me or making me doubt myself? Is this page helping me grow or feeding my insecurity? Once you start asking these questions, you'll naturally begin filtering what you consume. You'll find yourself unfollowing pages that make you feel, distancing yourself from conversations that add no value, and walking away from digital noise that drowns your inners. And then there are the relationships. Sometimes the most toxic inputs come from the closest people. You don't need to cut everyone off to protect your peace, but you also don't need to recognize patterns. Some people speak from their wounds, and if you're not careful, their wounds can reopen yours. Some people live in constant negativity, and if you stay too close, their perspective becomes your reality. Limiting toxic input means refusing to let anyone pull you into emotional places you've worked hard to heal from. It means choosing your circle based on sincerity, growth, and respect rather than familiarity or obligation. When you consistently limit toxic input, you'll notice changes inside yourself. Your thoughts become lighter. Your reactions become calmer. Your emotions feel more balanced. You become more aware of what drains you and what nurtures you. You start noticing the subtle difference between chaos that comes from outside and chaos that comes from within. And you learn how to protect yourself from both. Limiting toxic input is an act of wisdom. It is the recognition that peace is not something you find. It's something you find, and you create it by being intentional with every voice you listen to, every environment you enter, and every piece of content you allow to shape your heart. Protecting your mind is not selfish, it is necessary. Because a peaceful mind becomes a strong mind, and a strong mind becomes a life filled with clarity, purpose, and emotional freedom. Anchor yourself in faith and purpose. Because without an anchor, the storms of life will toss you in every direction. When your thoughts become chaotic, when negativity grows louder than your inner strength, when fear convinces you that you are powerless, you need something deeper than motivation, deeper than logic, deeper than temporary positivity. You need faith, faith that you are guided, protected, and carried through seasons you don't yet understand. And you need purpose, a reason to keep moving, a direction that keeps you grounded, a meaning that reminds you that your life is not random, your experiences are not wasted, and your struggles are not without wisdom. Faith and purpose together become a compass that steadies your heart when your mind feels overwhelmed. Anchoring yourself in faith means trusting something greater than your fear. It means believing that there is wisdom behind what you're facing, even when you cannot see the full picture. Faith reminds you that nothing is happening to break you. Everything is happening to build you in ways you may not realize yet. When negativity tries to convince you that you are alone, faith whispers that you are being held. When your thoughts pull you toward hopelessness, faith reminds you that every darkness is temporary and every chapter is purposeful. Faith doesn't promise a life without hardship. It promises that you will never face that hardship without guidance, and mercy supporting you at every step. Purpose, on the other hand, is what gives your life direction. It tells you that you are here for a reason, that your existence matters, that your journey has value beyond what you can see. Purpose gives pain meaning. It turns struggle into growth and fear into fuel. When you know your purpose, even if it's just a small piece of it, you stop getting lost in every negative thought that enters your mind. You stop letting temporary emotions convince you to give up permanently. Purpose reminds you that your life is bigger than this moment, bigger than the doubt you feel, bigger than the setback you're facing. It reminds you that you have something to offer, something to build, something to become. Anchoring yourself in faith and purpose creates emotional stability. When your mind tries to drag you into worst-case scenarios, your faith grounds you in trust. When negativity tells you that you're not enough, your purpose reminds you that you have a role only you can fulfill. When fear urges you to quit, your anchor keeps you steady. You may shake, but you do not break. You may fall, but you do not stay down. You may feel lost, but you are never without direction. This inner stability is what allows you to move through life with resilience instead of panic, with clarity instead of confusion. But anchoring yourself in faith and purpose is not passive, it is intentional. It requires daily connection, quiet moments of reflection, reminders of your values, returning to what truly matters when the world becomes loud. It means surrounding yourself with people, words, and environments that nourish your soul instead of draining it. It means stepping away from everything that disconnects you from your higher self. It means choosing alignment over distraction, depth over noise, and meaning over momentary impulse. Anchoring yourself spiritually also transforms your relationship with fear. Fear may still appear, but it no longer controls you. It becomes a signal instead of a dictator, a reminder to reconnect rather than a reason to collapse. When you are anchored, fear loses its ability to define your choices. Doubt loses its ability to shape your identity. Negativity loses its ability to drown your thoughts. You become steady, grounded, and centered within yourself. And with time, you begin to notice that faith and purpose change the way you see the world. Difficulties become opportunities for growth. Delays feel like protection instead of punishment. Setbacks become lessons instead of failures. You begin to trust the timing of your life, believing that everything is unfolding for your development, not your destruction. You begin to carry yourself with quiet confidence, knowing that your path is guided and your steps are meaningful. Ultimately, anchoring yourself in faith and purpose teaches you that peace does not come from the absence of negative thoughts. It comes from having something stronger than those thoughts to hold onto. It comes from knowing who you are, what you believe in, and why you exist. When the world shakes, when your mind becomes heavy, when your heart feels uncertain, you return to your anchor, and it steadies you every time.